Welcome to Women Ending War, the podcast where Palestinian and Israeli women talk about partnerships for peace, real solutions, and ideas for crafting a new world.
It's where we express our pain, anger, dreams, creativity and vision, where hope is a conscious choice.
معاكم أميرة مسلم.
I'm Ilana Stockman. Thanks for joining us.
Shalom, marhaba.
أهلا فيكي.
How are you?
I'm good.
Okay.
I think I'm good,
Yeah.
actually. Yes.
Yeah, all things considered, the world we're living in right now, it's,
It's terrible. It's horrible.
It's horrible.
Heartbreaking what's happening.
Yeah.
And I feel I even, when people ask me how are you, I just don't have the right answer for it. I always say I'm good, but it's not really that I'm good.
Yeah.
It's really painful what's going on.
Yeah. You want to share a little bit about what are the things that are really hard right now?
Just living in a place where you feel helpless, looking at people just few kilometers away from you, not knowing what to do and how you can help. And even if you try to or open your mouth, you can be silenced, you can be arrested, you can be considered as a terrorist. And it's nuts because they are just human beings. And thinking about these people in Gaza, it's like maybe it was me also, because I live in the West Bank, and any moment, at any time, it could be us also. So it's scary also.
Scary.
It's scary.
You feel like what's happening in Gaza can also come back to
Yes.
the West Bank?
Yes, actually, what's happening in Gaza is not exactly happening in the West Bank, but it's almost the same.
In what way?
In different ways.
Yeah.
Maybe they are not bombing us from the sky, but they are forcing us to leave by making our life impossible. Impossible to live, impossible to move, impossible even to breathe or think about the next moment, impossible to plan anything. So at the end, people are just leaving. So without forcing us to leave, by giving us, a safe area or not, they are just closing the areas. For example, we have in the West Bank more than 900 yellow gates. They are not even checkpoints.
They're like pop-up checkpoints, that kind of
No,
thing?
no,
Something
no,
I
no.
don't know.
They are gates.
Just gates.
Just gates. It's like an electric gate that opens whenever the IDF decides to open it, and they close it whenever they want to close it. And these gates are now between every village and every city and every town. In the past, you could see like closures, between the cities and the villages with like blocks of rocks. But now it's like every entrance and every exit, it has this gate, which make it impossible for us to move around, which make it impossible to plan the day. For example, if I have a meeting in Ramallah, fine. In the past, yes, we would be stuck in traffic, but now sometimes it's impossible even to reach Ramallah. Maybe in the past we could be stuck in 3 hours traffic because of all the sudden checkpoints or like military or checkpoints or whatever. But now, almost impossible to get there sometimes because of the closures of these gates. They just close them. And nobody is there to talk to. Nobody is there to tell them, hey, I have an emergency and I need to leave. I need to go. Nothing. Nobody.
And there's no like rules about it. There's no. It's random.
Just random whenever they want. And mostly when there is any incident that happens, for example, in the north, let's say near Jenin or Nablus, they do collective punishment. So they close these whole gates on all people. So all the people in the West Bank should be punished because someone did something on the checkpoint of Jalama in Jenin, or the opposite. Like if something happened in Bethlehem or Beit Jala, everybody gets punished for that.
Yeah. Collective punishment, that's been the IDF way for a long time.
Yes, since the beginning.
Yeah.
Since so many years. It's
I
not
write
new.
about, yes. I've been writing about this a lot, actually, about, because collective punishment is this, it's this very racist thing also. Yeah. It's the idea like if one person does something, bad, that means that their entire people should be punished. And without any judge or jury, without any, it's just like a decision. Okay, and then the punishment is, harsh, whether it's, destructions of homes or kicking out of...
Like, for example, another way of collective punishment is the permits to enter to Israel. When the 7th of October happened, they just canceled all kind of permits for workers. We had like more than 200,000 workers from the West Bank working in Israel. And those 200,000 people didn't do the 7th of October, weren't guilty of doing anything wrong. On the contrary, these 200,000 people were just coming in to Israel from Bethlehem, from Hebron, from Nablus, from here, from there, and doing their work. And at the end of the day, they would go back home and rest to go again the next morning at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to the checkpoint and stand, to come in. So they really didn't do anything. But this is another way of collective punishment. So now we have 200,000 family without jobs.
Yeah.
And closure, so no freedom of movement, and people are really suffering in the West Bank. They are really suffering. Some people I know in Bethlehem, more specifically, because I'm from Bethlehem, so I can tell you more about that. No tourism, because actually since COVID, tourism stopped around the world. Then Bethlehem, because it depends on tourism, everything stopped. And people there really depend on tourism in their living. And for example, souvenir shops and restaurants, hotels, doing olive tree wood, and people stopped their work. Then we started little by little getting up from COVID and, the effect of COVID on our businesses and our economy. And then we got into the 7th of October. And since then, tourism stopped. Life stopped in Bethlehem. You should come and see Bethlehem. It's so sad. People don't work anymore. People lost their jobs. For example, I have a relative who has a big souvenir shop in Bethlehem, and he had to close his business because he can't afford paying people without having any tourists, and he had to send 45 men and women, of course, to home. So 45 families just in that one business. So imagine. Right. So people don't have work, neither permits to go to Israel, neither freedom of movement, and some people really don't have a piece of bread on their table. They depend on maybe help from, some associations from here and there, or like church aid and so on. But it's not enough. They need a daily life. They need to pay their bills. They need to pay for the schools, for the university, for their life. Everything for life. Just life.
Sure. So you have 200,000 people who are just out of work.
This is only from the permits.
Just from the permits.
And imagine the people who lost their jobs from, all the businesses that closed. Because of no tourism, because of no work, because it's a circle, when one man loses his job and cannot, pay, for example, for the pharmacy and the shopping center, then the people in the pharmacy are not getting money.
Right.
And it's a circle. So if one person falls, everybody is falling.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same in Israel, because I hear also from my friends, they are suffering. They are suffering, maybe in places more than places, but people are suffering from the economic. So it's not only about the war or occupation or whatever. It's really...
There's the issue of the permits. There's the issue of the 900 yellow gates. there's the issue of people not having jobs and closing up businesses and not being allowed in. And even people who do get permits and can get into Israel, like you're here, but can't necessarily get around so easily, not allowed to have a car. And there's the whole thing also about even people who can get in aren't allowed to drive. So there's that whole thing, which is just insane.
And I can't work in Israel also. My permit that I have doesn't allow me to work in Israel. I'm not, and also they count the entries to Israel. So I have 180 days per year to enter Israel only.
Oh my God.
And so, I have, like, every time I come in Israel and then go out, I have to, give them that I left. You know, if not, they will count the days and I'm not, like, using it. So I will lose the permits without using it, really, like visiting you or going to the beach even, or going to a mall. You know, it's just so sad.
So, what you were saying before about how it feels like the strategy of what's going on with Gaza, right? There's an article that you had mentioned before we were talking about what B'Tselem calls the
Gazification of the West Bank. It's almost the same. Yes.
Could you explain that?
Actually, it's really it's pushing people to leave. You know, it's making people leave. It's making their life miserable and hard to live, so they can leave without forcing them. Though, by closing all the entrances of a village and a city, and not allowing people to work, you are forcing it. You know, it's not. They choose to leave. And actually, I will give you a number. The other day I read I heard this number since the 7th of October until today, or 1 month ago, there is more than 500 families who left Bethlehem for good. They just left. 500 families.
That's a lot.
An average of 3, 4, 5 people. You know.
And then you can't come back. Also, there's an issue of also getting once like a family leaves, there are also issues of coming back.
It's in the West Bank. It wasn't the case. This happened for people who lived in Jerusalem, for example.
They would
lose, East Jerusalem.
Right.
In the West Bank, it really never happened after Oslo, because, like, the Palestinian Authority is, like, responsible for the internal, the Ministry of Interior, so they control that, but also Israel controls the borders. So if they don't want you to come back, they will not allow you to come back. Or if they don't want you to leave, they will not let you leave. So,
but this strategy of, like, squeezing people out of their lives based on, like, that they don't have money and they don't have food and they don't have jobs or they can't get around and they don't have permits and all of that, that's what we're seeing in Gaza also, right? In the sense of, like, literally starving out.
Yeah, starving people. Yes.
So and then first forcing them to move and saying, okay, well, stay away from the war here. You can go here to some, tent camp, and then destroying the whole neighborhood. And then there's no place to go back to, and in the meantime, no food. Yeah. But that's the strategy we're talking about. I mean, it's very overt. Like, the Israeli government doesn't even try to hide it.
Yeah, exactly. They are open up.
Smotrich and Ben Gvir.
Yesterday he was talking about it. Like, we are making sure that there is no place that these people will go back to, and he was proud of it. So, it's about it's genocide. Whether people like it or not, I like to call it genocide. I like to call it in its name. It is genocide. Genocide is not just killing people by numbers. Like, if we look at other genocide around the world, we talk about, like, million people were killed. Fine. But then the definition of genocide goes beyond only numbers of people who were killed.
Right.
It's so many things. It's about children. It's about women. It's about rights of movement. It's about starvation. It's about so many things. So,
and also it's about the rhetoric behind it.
Yeah.
Right. Because, I went to the Rwanda Genocide Museum a couple of years ago. It's super interesting. It's tragic and heartbreaking, but really, enlightening to understand that genocide doesn't just happen, like, overnight. No. It happens from years and sometimes decades of language. it starts with the language of dehumanization of the other in lots of different ways, whether it's like, calling others vermin. The Nazis called Jews vermin, yeah. And then you had in there Rwanda also, they called, the different groups. Also, there was this famous radio announcer who called the other side vermin. And then you also have it in America. Also, you hear Trump using the word vermin to describe different groups. So here, I don't know if Israelis would use that exact word, but there is so much entrenched dehumanization of Palestinians. I mean, I say that with a lot of pain and sadness and shame because, I'm a Jewish Israeli. But like that is part of our culture. Like a big part of our culture is like strategic dehumanization of Palestinians. That's been going on for decades.
Yes.
And for me, that's why, like, my relationship with the word genocide is, complex. For a lot of Jews, it's complex because, we hear genocide and we think Holocaust, 6 million people, gas chambers, and, but that's not that. That's not what we're doing here. And how could you say that about us? We're victims, we're not perpetrators. So that's like a lot of Jews, like, go to that place. And that's why having a conversation about genocide with Jews and Israelis is really hard.
Yes.
But this is the point that really, like, gets me. First of all, I mean, there are a few points. Like, one is that the strategy of it, that, the Israeli government is literally planning strategies, and they've written papers and papers planning this strategy of starvation. Like, it's not even hidden. It's there. And that's like horrific to me. And another piece that, like, I see and hear that really, like, horrifies me is the language. Is, and it's really, and you hear it all the time. And even conversations about, like, children, I'll have conversations with people online about the fact that, Israel has killed 20,000 babies and children in Gaza. And, like, you hear things like, well, they're all terrorists. And I'm like, we are talking about children,
babies.
They
weren't
guilty,
there
like,
in 2006 when Hamas was elected. Sorry, Come
right? It's
on,
like,
people.
they all elected. It's like,
no,
children.
They're children.
Yes.
They weren't there in 2006.
Yes.
And even if they were there, do you think that even if they had, like, the choice to choose, they would allow them to choose other than that? There wasn't a choice for the Gazans. Yeah. Maybe some people, yes, they were happy about their choice, but others, they didn't have the choice.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And another way of doing that is settlers. And settlers is a huge thing in the West Bank. In the past, I used to move around from one place to another in the West Bank and between the cities at, like, even after midnight, coming back from work, from a party, from visiting friends or whatever. And now it's so scary because you never know from where these settlers come out. They are just all over the West Bank, all over the bypass road that were created for Palestinians only. They still access it and attack people on these roads. And also, they just took every corner of the Area C. Area C is the most beautiful area that is in the West Bank, which is mostly mountains, green areas for people, for farmers and Bedouins. And now we don't have access to almost all Area C because these settlers just took over the whole area in the West Bank from the north all the way to the south, starting like around the Tubas and the area around, all the way to South Hebron Hills. And they start with a small, like, caravan or like mobile home, we call it, and then they expand, of course, with the protection of the IDF and the police. Before Smotrich and Ben Gvir took over the leadership, or like they were in the government, we would call the IDF and ask them for help because some settlers would attack us, and the IDF would come and, like, they will stop the attack. Now, after, like, Ben Gvir and Smotrich are there, they just gave them the red light to do whatever they want. And they are doing it in the ugliest way possible. They are so brainwashed, some of them they are paid to do this work. And some of them are obliged to do this work. like, for example, the kids at risk.
Yeah, you talked about this on our first interview that when I
Yes.
interviewed you in Bethlehem.
Yes.
That was a couple of months ago. You told a story, right, about what happened with your family home, your ancestral family home that was
Yes.
taken over, and you talked then also about this issue of kids at risk being recruited.
Yes, exactly. Like, imagine, for example, Al-Makhrur, which I talked about in my first interview. Al-Makhrur is the only green area left for us around Bethlehem district, because the rest is all taken by settlers, by settlement, illegal settlement. I'm not talking about settlement which are like part of Israel. No, illegal settlement in the West Bank. Even by Israeli law, it's illegal. It's not like I'm just creating this, inventing this, you know. The rest of the area is either buffer area, which is not accessible for us. So it's because of the apartheid wall. So the wall is, for example, built this area, and then you have like a buffer area of like 2-3 kilometers wide. So you lost already the wall area and the buffer area, buffer zone. Then you have the roads, which are for settlers, so they are blocked most of the time, and the settlers are only allowed on it. And even if they allow us on it, there are like sudden, or like we call it, flying checkpoint. Every corner there is a jeep of military who are standing there.
Those are those flying checkposts, the pop-ups. They're
Yeah.
in addition to the 900 yellow gates.
Oh yeah, definitely. They
And
are
also
on the Area C roads
on
normally.
the Area C roads.
Yeah. And so Al-Makhrur, it's an area owned, most of the lands there are owned by Beit Jala people, Bethlehem people, who are Christians even. And they are not Hamas or, you know, they are Christian people from Bethlehem. And guess what? Suddenly, a company called Haminota, which is we call it like a daughter company of the Jewish National Fund, a British company that is not even registered here in the West Bank and in Bet El or in Asyon. And they act as if they own the area, and they start registering lands that they don't own and it doesn't belong to them in the land registry, as if it's their land, with forged papers. And it happened to us. Haminota came to us under the excuse, or that they say that they had bought the land, our land, from the original owner, who's the cousin of my father-in-law. Then when we went to court, in the Supreme Court of Israel, of course, we fought against them. It turned out to be that the deed they have was forged. We got them the original deed, that is the real one, from the Israeli archive. So we showed the Supreme Court that they are lying. And even in the Supreme Court, they said, okay, then Haminota couldn't prove ownership. Ramzi Kessiya, who's now the one who's using the land, is not the owner, but he can use it and he can stay in it until the original owner, who's the cousin, should come back and claim ownership. And then we can give you like a new deed about that. So we contacted our cousin, and they sent us, power of attorney and everything. And now we are able to prove that this land, we don't own it, but we have the right to use it and be in it. Okay? And so we went back to court. But before we went back to court, those settlers on the 31st of July, they attacked my in-laws. My son, actually, Ramzi, was there. My son is 9 years old. And they attacked them with like weapons and guns. And the one who was on top of these like settlers and like helping them is the head of the Gush Atzion settlements, Rosenthal. And he was like shouting and with his gun on like his like beside his pants, and like he was shouting at us, and we were like telling him like, hey, listen, you lost the case, like leave the land. Nothing. They kicked us out. The IDF came and protected them. When I arrived, I saw my son, who was 9 back then. Now he's like 9.5. It's not a big difference, but I saw him with his only toy that was left from the toys, because the rest of the toys they crushed underneath him. And he was so sad and so angry because it's not the first time they do it. But that time was like khalas, the extreme one that where they kicked us out. I approached one of the military. She was a woman. And that's what really makes me, I don't know what I can say the word, angry, sad, really frustrated that women are taking a role in this
Right.
like, injustice
And the violence. It's
yeah,
so
and the
violence.
And I asked her like, hey, excuse me, and I have it all recorded. I can send you the video. I told her like, hey, excuse me, like, what are you doing here? Like, my in-laws have Israeli citizenship. They are like Arab 1948, right? So you should protect them. This is their land and these are their papers. And she said literally, I am here to guard the settlers. She used the word guard. Guarding. Guarding, it means security guard. It means someone, you pay to do the job for you, or to guard you. And I told her, what about the other family? She told me, I don't care about them. These are the orders. And we had like to move around and like step aside, I mean. And the settlers just continued the work. They put all our stuff outside the land while we were just looking at them. And then we called the police. The Israeli police, of course, because it's Area C, and my in-laws are Israeli citizens. And the police came, and guess what? They arrested my ex-husband. Instead of protecting him from those settlers, they arrested my ex-husband and took him away from the land. And we were left alone, 3 women facing these kids, like really kids, literally kids, 11 and 12 years old kids. And like by the time we knew that these kids don't have even families, or they are taken in the system, they are called kids at risk in Israel. And instead of taking care of them and giving them love and care and like psychologist, put them with a psychologist or whatever, they send them to the West Bank.
There are so many aspects of this story that are so upsetting and distressing and alarming. The use of kids all around, that certain kids matter and certain kids are not even human on a certain, level, don't count. And the disregard for law, even Israeli law, not to mention international law, the disregard for humanity, all of that. And also the gender thing, I share with you that, as a woman, discovering women who are protecting patriarchal practices like militarism, women who, are protecting the injustice and the violence is upsetting. We started this podcast, it's Women Ending War, under this hopeful assumption that women come into the situation and bring a different a different way, a different way of doing things. And a lot of times it's true. There are many women who say, we come here and we want to do something peaceful. We want to reject violence. We want to reject hierarchies. We want to reject processes of dehumanization of the other. We want to reject all of that. There are a lot of women. The women who we invite here are those women.
Beautiful.
And yes. And at the same time, there are women who aren't. There are always, in every patriarchal system, there are women who benefit, for whatever reason, from participating in the violence. And, those benefits, they're not allies for women. They're allies of patriarchy. That exists everywhere because, patriarchy works for a lot of people. The system works for a lot of people. So, if the system works for you, then you're loyal to that instead of being loyal to issues of, justice and compassion and
humanity.
Humanity, exactly.
Humanity.
That's it. But it's still, I really share all of that frustration. It's hard. It's very hard. It's hard. Okay, let's talk about your work.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what you do with the Unarmed Civilian Protection.
Yes. So
we talked a little bit about that also with
last time. Yeah, but now we are getting things on the ground. When I met with you last time, we were still thinking about the way. We did an assessment report about bringing civilians from around the world, and Israel, of course, to do protective presence and accompaniment and other methods of UCP, of unarmed civilian protection, to help people in Area C in the West Bank. Because, as I said before, settlers' attack are like really horrible and horrifying and brutal. So people who were alone and got attacked really alone while they were alone without any activist helping them, they had to flee. So since 2 years until now, there is more than 1,400 people in these areas who had to flee because they were afraid from the settlers' attacks. So our idea is really to bring people and train them really good and to send them to stay with these communities. There are so many groups, and I can name like 22 different groups and organizations in Israel and internationally here in the West Bank doing this work.
Amazing. What, like Mahsom Watch and B'Tselem?
And each in different way, like Mestaklim, looking the occupation in the eye, Rabbis for Human Rights, Combatants for Peace, and I can name you know, so many organizations. The only thing that it's different from them for the UCP IP is that, first of all, it's Palestinian-led initiative. Most of these initiatives are like Israeli-led or Israeli-Palestinian-led or international-led, but nothing like Palestinian, you know? So it's Palestinian-led initiative. The second thing, that these people who are coming to stay are not volunteers. They are getting stipends to do this work, and they are staying at least 3 months within the same community. They
like
don't
in Bethlehem, like they go.
Yeah, for example, we choose a community which is under attack, and then they stay with them for at least 3 months. Of course, if they can stay more, it would be better, at least 6 months. But because of visa issues and so on, so they stay 3 months for
That's
now.
really interesting. Like, to do that work, you're literally putting your body in a place of danger. Like, you're using your body and your whole person as to be a guardian of justice and compassion and humanity, all those things. That's risky, right?
Yes.
So that's really interesting.
But if each one would say this is risky, nobody would protect these people, and at the end of the day, they would be expelled and ethnic cleansed from their communities.
I said risky not to tell people not to do it, but just to like highlight that it's people who are like brave and
they are brave. Yes,
and with their hearts in a very nice place of like protection.
Yes, and sometimes, Alana, we cannot protect people physically. Like the settlers would attack and they will be brutal, and we heard of so many activists getting hurt and beaten by those settlers.
Really?
But what really matters is not really the physical protection, but really to feel that you are not alone as a Palestinian community. As I said before, when you feel alone, it's easy for you to just take your children and leave. But when you feel that there are people beside you, that they are eating with you, they are cooking with you, they are like documenting what's happening and spreading the word to the world, it's really how do you call it? It's like an act of solidarity. Some people they like to call it co-resistance. Of course, not the resistance that people would think of, the armed resistance. No, this is non-violent resistance, of course. And the third thing is sumud. Sumud is steadfastness. So people would be staying as long as there are people around them. But when there are nobody, they will leave because they are too afraid. They have kids, who they should be worried about. And so in my project, in our initiative, we went around the different communities. We talked with so many people. We talked even with the Israeli organizations and the international ones who are doing this work. And we found that every corner of the West Bank in Area C, and in some areas it's Area B also, which shouldn't have settlers, but they are attacking them also in Area B. People really need help. a lot of help. They need, and instead of having 22 different groups who come once a week or twice a week, one person, per shift or 2% per shift, like we need more people to stay with them, like really to live with them for a few months and then rotate and so on. And that's how our initiative will be. We're bringing those people, including Israelis. There's from our team also Israeli activists who will take 3 weeks online training, 1 week on face-to-face training, and they will stay in this community in the Jordan Valley for 3 months, and then there will be another group who will overlap with them for 2 weeks, and then they will stay another 3 months, the second group. So we have like a total of like around 15 people who will be staying with this community. And this community, if you go and see them, Elana, it's really, really heartbreaking. They get attacked on a daily basis, every day. There's settlers coming in. They don't, like, these settlers, sometimes they don't really attack physically. They just pass from like the middle of the tents of these like Bedouin community. They just throw trash on them. Like they do any kind of act that intimidate and scare this community, and lots of time they attack with the presence of the IDF.
Like there's the Musafariata story.
Masafriata down South Hebron Hill. Yes, it's the same. You saw many footage about Masafriata.
Yeah, they won an Oscar for the footage.
Yeah, amazing. Yes, so it's the same. It's the same, but it's in Jordan Valley, the community that we chose. When the time comes and we have like more resources, of course, we will expand to more areas in the region, of course.
But you're saying that like people are leaving, like in Bethlehem already 500 families left, and also, is it true that also in Masafayata like lots of people have like left?
Of course.
They have like no homes left.
Yeah.
And that was with settlers and the IDF together. And
yeah, like 3 weeks ago, around 3 weeks, خلت الضبعة, which is a community in Masafriata, more than 45 different houses. It's not like even they are not. I can't call them a house. It's a room, a room where like a whole family lives in. It's not a structure with like concrete and so on. It's a very simple structure that is done from like recycling. And with that they came and they demolished the whole village, forcing people to leave. And those people, some of them just left to the cities, or to the villages nearby. And some of them just moved the place and went in a tent in a different area. But it's like...
I visited Atawani about maybe like 3-4 years ago. I was part of this Palestinian Israeli women's dialogue group, and there were these 2 women in the group who were working together, one from near where I live and one from Atwani. So we went to visit, and they're living in caves.
Yeah,
they were living in caves
in Sarura. Near Twani, so you go inside there, and it's caves. Yeah, actually,
and we actually met Basil then, the filmmaker. I mean, he wasn't.
He was younger.
We had met him, and the day we met him, he had spent the night before in the hospital because he had been beaten up. He's this really gentle guy. He's a really gentle.
Is amazing, yes. And those people in the cave, I want to give you another example of like solidarity. A few years ago, I think 2017. A group of different organizations from Israel and Palestine, they cooperated together and did this Sumud camp, where they came together, Israeli and Palestinian activists from all over Israel and Palestine, and they went there to Sarura, to near Twani, and they stayed with the families in the caves because the army gave them evacuation order from the caves. We stayed around 50 days with these people, where we ate together, we danced together, we did all kind of activities, dialogue, At the end of the day, we were all kicked out from there. Nothing happened.
When I visited there, I remember feeling like I couldn't believe this was maybe like 30 kilometers from my house. It was like, within an hour, you go from feeling like, oh, you're in a civilization to feeling you're people living in caves with no running water and no electricity and living under this. It was my first time really seeing that, that close up. And I feel like it's part of what I was saying before about the dehumanization process, is that Israelis are like taught to not even see that. We don't even see it. This reality doesn't. And then if you would hear about it, the Israeli like psyche, or whatever you want to call it, culture, has like a zillion ways to turn them into others, less worthy or less whatever. And it's really, I don't know, tragic. I don't know, tragic isn't even the right word. It's appalling. I don't have the right words to describe what this is. But all these things are connected, they're all just connected.
Yes.
So, your organization, it's coming on to new stages, new growth, new projects. Is there anything you would want to say to people, to have people, like I get comments from people all the time saying, what can I do? What can I do?
Yes, of course. And actually, it's not only for my project or for this initiative that we are doing. It's for all Area C. Find those groups who do protective presence in Area C and join them. Join forces. Instead of having 2 people on the weekend, we need 10. We need 20 actually in each community,
Yeah.
And we don't need them only on weekend. We need them the whole week. We need them to be with the community. We need them to eat together. We need them to cook, maklube and mansaf together. We need them to do everything together. It's not just about coming when there is an attack. I don't need you when there is an attack. Because when there is attack, khalas, I will be attacked and that's it. I need you to be with me, to show me solidarity.
Solidarity.
It's about solidarity.
It's about solidarity.
Yeah.
So let's put a link, when we share the podcast, we'll put a link for people to follow and contact and sort of. That's great. Amira, I'm really excited about season 4 happening. This is our first episode of season 4, and I'm really excited to have you as co-host this season. Eva Dalak, the previous host, she's still around. She doesn't live here. She lives in Costa Rica, so she comes and goes. But we'll hopefully keep her, in the conversation as well. I'm really, really excited to be doing this with you.
Me too. I'm so excited. Thank you for this opportunity.
My pleasure. That's great. I feel powerful.
Yeah.
I feel like our conversation is powerful, and we have the ability to, get these ideas out there and make change.
Yes, maybe one person is enough to make a change. I believe that.
You believe that? 1% at a time.
Yeah,
sometimes.
1% at a time. Yeah.
Thank you. Shukran.
Shukran. Thank you. Toda.
Thanks for listening to Women Ending War. If you want to help create change, you should join us.
Subscribe, like, comment, or share. Tell your friends about us. Talk about it. Be part of the solution.
Thanks, and see you next time.